You're just a burden in our lives, Mom. You need to get out of this house right now." Susan's words cut the air like knives as I held my 70th birthday cake. 70 years of life and my own children were throwing me out of my own home on my birthday. Michael stepped forward and snatched the keys from my hands while Brenda recorded the whole thing with her phone, smiling as if it were the happiest moment of her life. "You won't be needing these anymore, mother-in-law. We'll take care of everything now." Kevin pushed my suitcase toward the door, the same suitcase I had packed, thinking I was going on vacation with them. How stupid I had been. But what hurt the most was seeing my granddaughter, Chloe, crying in the corner, covering her ears to block out her parents' screams. She was the only one who looked at me with shame as they dragged me toward the door. "Grandma, I'm so sorry," she whispered through her tears before Susan yanked her by the arm. "Be quiet, Chloe. Your grandmother needs to learn she can't manipulate us with her victim act anymore." That was the moment something broke inside of me. It wasn't just my heart, it was my entire soul. 3 hours earlier, everything had started as the perfect birthday. The house smelled of cinnamon and fresh roses because I had spent the whole morning decorating every corner to welcome my family. The white lace curtains I had hand-embroidered let in the golden afternoon light, creating those sunbeams that always made me feel blessed. I had set out the linen tablecloth that belonged to my mother, the one I only used on special occasions, and had filled the table with all of my children's favorite dishes. Pot roast just the way Michael liked it, sweet cornbread for Susan, and the vanilla cheesecake that Kevin always asked for when he came to visit. Susan arrived first, carrying a bouquet of yellow flowers and a smile that I now realize was completely fake. "Happy birthday, Mom. 70 years, my goodness," she exclaimed. She hugged me, but her arms felt cold, mechanical, as if she were hugging a stranger. Kevin came in behind her, carrying a bottle of expensive bourbon that he had surely bought with the credit card I had given him last month. "Eleanor, you're looking great for 70, he said with that slick voice that had always made me uneasy. Chloe hid behind her parents, but when she saw me, she ran toward me with her arms open. At least my granddaughter still truly loved me. Michael arrived minutes later with Brenda, who immediately started taking pictures of every corner of the house with her phone. "Oh, mother-in-law, what a beautiful house. I love how you've kept everything so well." Her eyes shone in a way that wasn't admiration, but something darker, more calculating. She stopped in front of the wooden hutch, where I kept my important documents, and I saw how her fingers traced the edge, as if it were already hers. Michael gave me a kiss on the cheek but avoided my eyes. "Mom, we need to talk about a few things after dinner," he said in a low voice. "Important things about your future." Dinner unfolded in a strange atmosphere that I didn't understand until it was too late. Everyone ate and laughed, but their voices sounded hollow, as if they were acting in a play I hadn't read. Susan praised the food with too much enthusiasm. Kevin made jokes that no one found genuinely funny. And Brenda wouldn't stop taking pictures of everything, even the documents I had on the dining room table. "It's for the memories, mother-in-law," she explained, when I asked why she was photographing my papers. "We want to save all the special moments." I should have noticed how Michael was looking over the bills I had left on the kitchen counter. I should have paid attention to the way Susan looked at the jewelry I was wearing, as if she were calculating its value. I should have been suspicious when Kevin asked about the deed to the house, feigning casual interest. But I was so happy to have them with me, so grateful not to be spending another birthday alone like the last 5 years, that I interpreted all those signs as expressions of love and concern for my well-being. When they brought out my birthday cake, The candles flickered like little warnings I couldn't read. 70 yellow candles that I had bought myself that morning, thinking how beautiful the moment would be when everyone sang for me. Susan lit each one carefully, but I noticed her hands were trembling slightly. "Make a very special wish, Mom," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "because this is going to be a birthday you'll never forget." Her words had a strange, almost threatening tone, but I took it as maternal affection. Blowing out the candles felt like I was extinguishing my own light. I made the same wish I always did, that my family would be united and that I would never lack their love. What a cruel irony of fate. Everyone applauded when the flames went out, but their applause sounded like the echo in an empty church. Kevin poured wine into glasses I recognized as the good ones. The crystal ones I only used at Christmas. "A toast to Eleanor," he said, raising his glass. "For all the years she has given us so much." The way he said so much sent a chill down my spine, though at that moment I didn't understand why. It was after the toast that the performance began. Susan cleared her throat and exchanged a look with Michael, a look I had seen 1,000 times when they were children and had planned some mischief. But now they were 40-year-old adults, and the mischief they had planned was far more sinister than my mind could imagine. Michael stood up, adjusted his tie as he always did when he was about to say something important, and began to speak in a voice that seemed rehearsed. "Mom, Susan and I have been talking a lot lately about your situation, my situation, as if I were a problem that needed to be solved." "What situation, son?" I asked with a smile, thinking maybe they meant it was time for me to find a companion or travel more. Brenda pulled some papers out of her purse, documents I recognized as copies of my bank statements. My heart began to beat faster. "How did you get those?" The question escaped my lips as a whisper, because part of me already knew the answer and didn't want to hear it. "We got them because we needed to understand your real situation, Mom." Susan answered with a coldness I had never heard from her before, and we discovered some very interesting things. Kevin got up and began to walk around the living room as if it were his own house, touching my furniture, my photographs, my memories, with a familiarity that turned my stomach. "Eleanor, you have a very valuable house, considerable savings, and no real plan for the future. That worries us a lot." The word "worries" sounded false coming from him. What I saw in his eyes was not concern. It was pure greed. Michael spread more papers on the table, legal documents I didn't recognize. "We've consulted with a lawyer, Mom. We think the best thing for you is to transfer the house into our names to avoid legal problems in the future. It would also be good if you gave us full access to your bank account so we can help you manage your money better." His words fell on me like stones. My own son was trying to strip me of everything I had worked for over 50 years. "I don't understand," I murmured, feeling my legs begin to tremble. "Why do you need access to my money? You have your own jobs, your own lives." Susan laughed, but it was a bitter laugh, full of resentment. "Our jobs. Mom, Kevin lost his job 6 months ago. I work part-time at a store that barely gives me enough to survive." And Michael turned to his brother-in-law with a cruel smile. "Tell Mom about your big business deal, Kevin." My son-in-law looked down for the first time all night. I had some problems with my company, Eleanor. Some investments that didn't pan out as expected. Brenda came over and placed her hand on her husband's shoulder, as if it were a well-rehearsed performance. "What Michael is trying to say is that we lost a lot of money, mother-in-law, and we need help urgently." The way she said "we need" sounded more like a threat than a request. It was then that the pieces began to fit together in my mind like a demonic puzzle. The more frequent visits in recent months, the questions about my documents, the credit cards they had asked to borrow and never returned, Kevin looking at my bills, Brenda photographing every corner of my house, Susan asking about my jewelry. It had all been part of a plan. My own birthday had been the perfect stage for their final blow. So this is what you're going to do. I continued feeling my voice grow firmer with each word. You're going to take my house, my money, my belongings, and what exactly am I left with? Susan shrugged as if my question were irrelevant. Mom, you're 70 years old. You don't need so much space, so much money. We're young. We have families to support, dreams to fulfill. You've already lived your life. Those last 4 words stabbed into my chest like poison daggers. You've already lived your life. I looked at Susan, my little girl, whom I had carried in my arms for entire nights, when she had a fever, whom I had taught to walk by holding her hands in this very hallway. That same little girl was now telling me that my life no longer had value, that I no longer deserve to have a home, a future, a dignity. Do you really believe that, Susan? Do you really believe that because I'm 70 years old, I no longer deserve to live in peace? Her response was worse than her silence. She laughed. A dry, cruel laugh I had never heard from her before. Mom, don't be dramatic. We're not saying you don't deserve to live. We're just being realistic. We need these resources more than you do. We can do something productive with them. Kevin nodded his head as if it were the most logical thing in the world. Eleanor, think about it. Such a big house for one person is a waste. We have Chloe. We need space for her to grow to have a better future. It was then that I heard the smallest voice of all, the one that hurt the most. Chloe, my 16-year-old granddaughter, stood up timidly from her chair. Mom, Dad, this isn't right. Grandma has helped us our whole lives. You can't do this to her. Susan turned to her daughter with a fury that terrified me. You be quiet, Chloe. The adults are talking. But my granddaughter, bless her heart, did not back down. No, Mom, this is wrong, and you know it. Grandma paid for my school uniforms last year when you couldn't. She bought my supplies, my shoes, my backpack, and now you want to kick her out of her own house. Susan's hand rose as if to strike Chloe, but I stopped her with a strength I didn't know I had. Don't you dare touch that child. My voice came out as a roar that silenced the entire room. If you have a problem with me, you solve it with me, but you do not touch my granddaughter. Susan lowered her hand, but her gaze became even more venomous. Look at how you manipulate even my own daughter, Mom. This is why you need to leave. You've always been a manipulator. Michael intervened before I could respond. Mom, enough with the drama. We've made a family decision and it's final. You're going to live in a place more appropriate for your age, and we're going to take over the house and your finances. It's for the best for everyone. Brenda smiled as she pulled more papers from her purse. We've already found a very nice nursing home, mother-in-law. It's only 2 hours from here. They have good food activities for people your age. It'll be perfect. A nursing home. They wanted to put me in a nursing home to take everything I owned. 50 years of work, of sacrifice, of getting up at 5 under in the morning to get to the factory, of sewing uniforms late into the night for extra money, of living with the bare minimum so I could help them when they needed it. And their plan was to lock me away in a place where I could die quietly while they enjoyed my inheritance while I was still alive. And what if I refuse? I asked, though I already knew they had an answer for that too. Kevin smiled, and for the first time that night, he showed his true face. Well, Eleanor, we hope you'll be reasonable. But if you're not, we have other options. My brother-in-law is a lawyer, and he explained to us that a person of your age might not be in the mental condition to make important decisions. We could request a psychological evaluation, perhaps a legal conservatorship. The threat hung in the air like toxic smoke. If I didn't hand everything over voluntarily, they would have me declared mentally incompetent and take it by force. I'd seen cases like that on the news. Elderly people stripped of everything by unscrupulous relatives. I never thought my own children would be capable of sinking so low. Brenda approached me with that fake smile she had perfected over the years. Mother-in-law, we don't want to resort to unpleasant extremes. We just want you to sign these papers tonight, and tomorrow we'll take you to see your new home. Everything's going to be fine, you'll see. She held out a gold pen, probably expensive. Bought with my own money. We just need your signature here, here, and here. I looked at the documents without really reading them. The letters blurred before my eyes, not because of my age, but because of the tears I was fighting to hold back. But there was one line I could read clearly. Total transfer of assets and properties. They wanted me to sign my own social death sentence, to renounce everything it had taken me a lifetime to build. And if I need money for medicine for emergencies, I asked with a voice I no longer recognized as my own. Susan sighed as if I were a capricious child asking silly questions. Mom, that's what we'll be here for. We'll give you an allowance like a child. You won't lack for anything basic, an allowance. After 50 years of work, after raising them, educating them, supporting them financially, even when they were adults, my reward was to become a dependent child living off their generosity. The most humiliating moment of my life was about to arrive, but I didn't know it yet. I took the pen with trembling hands, not because I was going to sign, but because I needed time to process the magnitude of the betrayal I was experiencing. Before I sign, I said, with a voice I tried to keep steady, I want to understand one thing. When did you plan all this? When did you decide that your mother was an obstacle you needed to remove? They exchanged one of those complicit glances that I now found nauseating. Mom, don't see it as something negative, my eldest son replied with a condescension that made my blood boil. We've been worried about you for months. Your mental health isn't the same. Sometimes you forget things. You get confused with dates. It's normal at your age, but you need supervision. Lies. It was all lies designed to justify the unjustifiable. My mind was perfectly clear. So clear that I could remember every dollar I had lent them in the last 5 years, every favor I had done for them every time I had put their needs before my own. My mental health is perfect, I responded firmly. So perfect that I can remember exactly how much money I lent to Kevin last year for his supposed used car business, $50,000 that he never paid back. Kevin turned red as a ripe tomato. That money was lost in the investment. Eleanor. I already explained that businesses don't always work out as planned. Brenda put her hand on her husband's arm as if she were the one who needed comforting. Mother-in-law, you can't hold every dollar you've lent us over our heads. We're family. Families help each other without keeping score. Without keeping score. How easy it was to say that when they had never given anything in return. You're right, Brenda. Families help each other, but they also respect each other, care for each other, protect each other. They don't conspire to steal. The word steal fell like a bomb in the room. Susan jumped up, her face contorted with anger. How dare you call us thieves? Everything we're doing is for your own good, for my own good. The laugh that escaped my throat was bitter, desperate. Taking my house is for my good. Stealing my savings is for my good. Threatening to have me declared insane is for my good. Each question was a whip that made them cringe a little more. But instead of showing shame, they showed more aggression. It was then that Kevin completely lost his temper. He approached me with threatening steps, his fists clenched. Enough of playing the victim, Eleanor. You owe us a lot more than you think. Who do you think has been paying for your prescriptions for the last 2 years? Who's been coming over to fix your leaks, your electrical problems? Who has taken care of you when you get sick? His words left me breathless, not because they were true, but because they were so blatantly false. Kevin, I pay for my own medicine with my Social Security. The few times you've come to fix something in my house, I've paid you as if you were any other handyman. And when I got pneumonia last year, it was Chloe who took care of me, not you. Chloe nodded from her corner, tears streaming down her cheeks. It's true, Dad. I stayed with Grandma for 2 weeks because you guys said you had more important things to do. Susan turned to her daughter with a fury that chilled my soul. Chloe, if you don't shut up right now, you're going to your room and you're not coming out until tomorrow. But my granddaughter, my brave granddaughter, stood up with a dignity that none of the adults in that room were showing. No, Mom, someone has to tell the truth here. Grandma has given us everything. When Dad lost his job, she paid our rent for 3 months. When you needed money for your gallbladder surgery, Grandma sold her jewelry to help you. And when I needed money for my school trip, she was the only one who helped me without asking for anything in return. Every word from Chloe was like a stab to her parents because it was the pure, undeniable truth. Susan approached her daughter with intentions that terrified me. I told you to shut up, you ungrateful little brat. She raised her hand to slap her, but this time it was Chloe who defended herself. Don't touch me. I'm sick of your lies of seeing how you treat Grandma after everything she's done for us. The scene became chaotic. Susan screaming, Kevin threatening Michael, trying to calm things down, while Brenda continued to record everything with her phone as if it were a reality show. And in the midst of this circus, I remained seated with the pen in my hand, watching my family disintegrate before my eyes. But something had changed in me during those minutes of screams and threats. The pain was transforming into something more dangerous, a cold, calculating fury. It was in that moment of total chaos when something ignited within me like a flame that had been dormant for 70 years. While my children screamed and fought like wild animals in my own living room, I remained motionless, observing every movement, every word, every gesture that would prove to be crucial in what was to come. The pen was still in my hand, but it was no longer shaking. My hands had become firm as steel, and my mind began to work with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Susan was still yelling at Chloe, calling her ungrateful and thankless, while Kevin paced my living room, like a caged lion touching my things as if they were already his. Michael was trying to maintain his composure, but I could see the sweat running down his forehead, and Brenda had put her phone away probably because she realized she was recording evidence of her own crimes. In the midst of all this madness, an idea began to form in my head, like a dark seed that was germinating quickly. All right, I said suddenly in a voice so calm that everyone stopped to look at me. You win. I'll sign your papers. The silence that followed was so thick, I could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock, the same clock that had marked every happy and sad moment of my life in this house. Susan smiled triumphantly. Kevin visibly relaxed, and Michael sighed in relief. Only Chloe looked at me with an expression of horror, as if she knew something terrible was about to happen. I took the documents and looked at them carefully, as if I were really considering signing them. But I was actually memorizing every detail, every clause, every account number that appeared on those papers. My photographic memory, the same one that had helped me manage the family finances for decades, was registering information I knew I would need very soon. "I just have one more question," I said, looking up at Michael. "When exactly do you plan on moving me to the nursing home?" "Tomorrow morning," my son replied with a smile he thought was victorious. "We already have everything arranged. Brenda will come over to help you pack your personal things, just the essentials, because the room at the home is small." Brenda nodded with false enthusiasm. "You can only take one suitcase, mother-in-law. But don't worry, we'll take care of everything else." Everything else. My house, my furniture, my photographs, my memories of 50 years of marriage, the toys I had saved from when my children were little, the love letters my husband had written to me before he died. All of that would be the everything else they would take care of. They would probably sell it or throw it away without even asking if there was anything I wanted to keep. "I understand," I murmured, bringing the pen to the paper. "Just one more thing. Kevin, could you get me a glass of water? All this excitement has made me a little dizzy." Kevin headed to the kitchen with a spring in his step as if he already owned the place. That was my chance. While he was in the kitchen, I discreetly took my phone out of my dress pocket and activated the voice recorder. The small device that Chloe had taught me to use last month would become my secret weapon. When Kevin returned with the water, I drank slowly while my children waited impatiently. "Thank you, Kevin. Now I can think clearly." I put the pen on the paper, but instead of signing, I began to speak in a clear, strong voice. I want it to be very clear what is happening here tonight. I, Eleanor Martinez, 70 years of age, am being extorted by my own children to hand over all my assets to them. "Mom, don't be ridiculous," Michael interrupted. But I continued unfazed. "My son, Michael Martinez, and my daughter, Susan Martinez, along with their respective spouses, are threatening to have me declared mentally incompetent if I do not sign these documents that strip me of my house, my savings, and all my belongings." Susan tried to approach me to take the phone, but I stopped her with a look that froze her in place. I also wanted on record that they are forcing me to go to a nursing home against my will after I have helped them financially for years without ever asking for anything in return. Kevin realized what I was doing and lunged at me to grab the phone, but Chloe stepped between us. "Don't touch her," my granddaughter shouted with a bravery that filled me with pride. "Stop abusing Grandma." It was then that Susan completely lost control. She approached me with her eyes filled with rage and shouted the words that would seal her fate forever. "You are just a burden in our lives, Mom. We can't take it anymore. You need to get out of this house right now and stop bothering us." Every word was recorded with perfect clarity on my phone. Irrefutable evidence of their cruelty and their true intentions. What followed, Susan's venomous words, was an escalation of violence I never thought I would witness in my own home. Michael came toward me and snatched the keys from my hands with a brutality that left red marks on my wrists. "You don't need these keys anymore, Mom. We'll take care of everything now." His voice had lost any pretense of filial affection. It was the voice of a stranger, a predator who had found its perfect prey. Kevin pushed a suitcase toward the door that I didn't remember packing, and it was then that I realized they had planned every detail of this night for weeks, perhaps months. "Your luggage is ready, Eleanor," he said with a cruel smile. "Brenda took the liberty of packing your basics yesterday while you were at church. The betrayal was so deep it took my breath away. They had entered my home in my absence. They had touched my belongings. They had decided what I deserved to keep and what I did not. Brenda held up a lease agreement that I recognized as being for the nursing home they had talked about. "We already signed for you, mother-in-law. I hope you don't mind that we took that little liberty. The place is in high demand and we couldn't risk losing the room." They had forged my signature. My own children had committed document fraud to expedite my expulsion from my own home. It was when Susan pushed me toward the door that something definitively broke inside me. It wasn't just my heart. It was my entire soul shattering into pieces. But from those cracks came not more pain, but a steely determination I didn't know I possessed. "Fine," I said with a calmness that bewildered them. "I'll go, but I want you to know that I will remember every word you've said tonight, every push, every humiliation." Susan laughed with a cruelty that chilled the blood. "Mom, don't be dramatic. In a couple of weeks, you won't even remember this. At your age, memory is the first thing to go." Her words were like gasoline on the fire burning inside me. Kevin nodded in approval. "Eleanor, you'll be very well taken care of at the home. You'll be very happy without having to worry about maintaining this big house." They were going to be very happy spending my money living in my house, sleeping in my bed, while I withered away in a nursing home room waiting for a death that could no longer come soon enough. Michael handed me a piece of paper with the address of the place they intended to lock me away. "The car service will be here for you tomorrow at 8 in the morning. I recommend you don't cause any trouble, Mom. It would be very sad to have to call the police to escort you." The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If I didn't cooperate voluntarily, they would use law enforcement to remove me from my own house. They had thought of everything. They had closed all the exits, or so they thought. But what they didn't know was that I had been thinking too, and my plan was much more sophisticated than theirs. Chloe ran to me with tears streaming down her cheeks like rivers of sorrow. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I tried to stop them, but they won't listen." I hugged her tightly, inhaling the scent of her apple shampoo, memorizing the feeling of her arms around my neck. I knew this might be the last time I hugged her for a long time. "It's not your fault, my love," I whispered in her ear. "Adults sometimes do terrible things, but that doesn't mean you have to carry their guilt." Susan came over and yanked Chloe by the arm with a violence that terrified me. "Stop the drama, Chloe. Your grandmother is going to be fine, and so are we. It's time you learned that in life you have to make difficult decisions." My granddaughter resisted her mother's pull. "These aren't difficult decisions, Mom. This is pure cruelty. Grandma doesn't deserve this after everything she's done for us." It was then that Brenda took out her phone and started recording again. But this time, it wasn't to document my reactions, but to create false evidence. "Mother-in-law, tell the camera that you agree to move to the nursing home, that you understand it's what's best for you." Her smile was that of a snake that had found its perfect victim. They wanted me to provide the evidence of my own consent to legally protect themselves from any future accusations. I looked directly at the camera, and with a firm, clear voice, I said exactly what she wanted to hear. "I agree to move to the nursing home. I understand that my children believe it is what is best for me." But what Brenda didn't know was that my own phone was still recording in my pocket, capturing not just my words, but the entire context of coercion and threats that surrounded them. Kevin took my suitcase and dragged it to the door as if it were trash that needed to be taken out. "Perfect. Then everything is settled. Eleanor, it's been a pleasure knowing you all these years." His farewell sounded like an epitaph, as if I were already dead to them. Michael gave me a kiss on the cheek that felt like the kiss of Judas, false and treacherous. "Take care, Mom. We'll visit you very soon." The door closed behind me with a sound that resonated like a hammer hitting a coffin. There I was at 10:00 hours on the night of my 70th birthday, standing on the sidewalk in front of the house that had been my home for 30 years, with a suitcase in my hand and the certainty that my own children had just signed their own social death warrant. But they didn't know it yet. They thought they had won. That the foolish old woman had finally been neutralized. From inside, I could hear their voices celebrating, laughing, toasting their victory with my own wine. Susan shouted with glee, "We're finally rid of the old hag," Kevin added. "Now we can live in peace without her constant complaining." Their words carried to the street, and I recorded them all on my phone, building a file of evidence that would soon become their nightmare. I walked to the corner where I knew there was a bench under the streetlight. I sat down as if I were a defeated old woman waiting for help, but in reality, I was executing the first phase of my plan. I took out my phone and dialed the number I had memorized 3 days earlier when I began to suspect what was coming. "Mr. Hayes, this is Eleanor Martinez. I need you to activate the plan we discussed." Yes, exactly as we rehearsed. David Hayes was a young and ambitious lawyer who had handled my late husband's will. Smart, discreet, and with a thirst for justice that made him the perfect ally for what was to come. 3 days before, when I found the copies of my bank statements in Brenda's purse, I knew I needed immediate legal protection. "Mrs. Martinez, are you sure you want to proceed?" "Once we activate the protective measures, there's no turning back. I am completely sure, Mr. Hayes. My children have just shown their true colors. It's time they learned that they severely underestimated their mother." I ended the call and dialed the second number on my list, the bank, where I had managed my accounts for 25 years. "Good evening. This is Eleanor Martinez. I need to activate the security protocol we established last week. Yes, all accounts, all cards, all access." The bank manager, an efficient woman named Patricia, had witnessed how my children had begun making suspicious transactions with the cards I had lent them. When I explained my suspicions, she herself suggested setting up a protection system that would be activated with a simple phone call. "Mrs. Martinez, in 15 minutes, all additional cards will be canceled, and the main accounts will require 2-factor in-person authentication. Are you sure you wish to proceed?" "Completely sure, Patricia. And please also activate the automatic transfer we scheduled. It's time my savings were in a safer place." The safer place was an account at another bank in another city, under a name that only I knew. An account I had opened discreetly the week before, when I realized my children were planning something big. My third call was the most painful, but also the most necessary. "Chloe, it's your grandmother. I know it's late, but I need you to do something very important for me." My granddaughter answered with a trembling voice, probably hiding in her room so her parents wouldn't hear. "Grandma, where are you? Mom and Dad said they had already taken you to the home." "But I know that's not true." "I'm fine, my love, but I need you to remember tomorrow, when your parents realize what's about to happen, that everything I did was to protect you too. They're going to try to blame me for everything, but you know the truth." Chloe began to cry on the other end of the line. "Grandma, what are you going to do? I'm scared." Her fear was justified because what I was about to unleash would change their lives forever. "Don't be afraid, Chloe. Just remember that I love you more than anything in this world, and that everything I'm about to do is to teach your parents that actions have consequences. Save this phone number in your contacts, but don't tell anyone. Someday when you're older, you'll understand why this was necessary." I dictated a number I had bought that same week, a completely new line that no one else knew. My fourth call was to the most exclusive real estate agency in the city. "Good evening. Is Mr. Thompson available? This is Eleanor Martinez. Eleanor, I want to activate the express sale of my property that we discussed last week. Yes, the price we agreed upon is fine. I need the transaction to be completed before noon tomorrow. Frank Thompson was a real estate agent who specialized in quick sales for clients who needed immediate liquidity. When I explained my situation, he himself suggested having everything prepared for an emergency sale. While I made these calls, I could see the lights of my house on the silhouettes of my children moving through the rooms like vultures inspecting their new carry-on. Kevin was in my office, probably going through my documents and planning how to spend my money. Susan was in my bedroom, surely deciding what to do with my personal belongings. Michael walked through the living room as if he were the new owner of the castle he had just conquered. But what they didn't know was that every move they made was being monitored. The week before, when I confirmed my suspicions about their intentions, I had discreetly installed security cameras at strategic points in the house. Small devices connected to my phone that recorded everything that happened in my absence. Their celebrations, their plans, their cruel comments about my fate. Everything was being documented in real time. My fifth and final call of that night was the most satisfying. Secure ride. I need a trip to the airport. Yes, tonight. No, I'm not in a hurry. I have an early flight tomorrow. The driver arrived in 15 minutes, an older man who helped me with my suitcase and didn't ask unnecessary questions. As we drove away from my old house, I could see that the lights were still on, that the party was continuing. The airport at midnight had a solemnity that perfectly matched my mood. There were no crowds, no noise, just the echo of my footsteps on the polished marble as I made my way to the VIP lounge I had reserved to spend the night. My flight left at 6 hours in the morning, but I needed to be there early to ensure everything went according to my plan. As I walked through the empty corridors, my phone began to vibrate with messages I knew would arrive very soon. The first message came at 2 in the morning. It was from Kevin. Eleanor, there's a problem with one of your cards. Could you call us when you get this message? His tone was casual, as if it were a minor technical issue. 30 minutes later, the second message arrived, this time from Susan. Mom, some of your cards aren't working. We need you to come to the bank tomorrow to sort out this misunderstanding. The word misunderstanding made me smile. There was no misunderstanding. Everything was working exactly as I had planned. At 3 in the morning, the messages became more urgent. Michael wrote, Mom, we need to talk urgently. There are serious problems with your bank accounts. Where are you? 40 minutes later, Brenda sent, Mother-in-law, we are very worried. The cards are blocked and we don't know why. Please contact us immediately. The concern in their messages was palpable, but it wasn't concern for my well-being, but panic for their finances. At 4 in the morning, when they were completely desperate, the calls began. My phone rang every 5 minutes, but I didn't answer. Every missed call was a small victory. Every voicemail I didn't listen to was another drop of justice falling on their heads. Finally, at 5 in the morning, the message I had been waiting for arrived. It was from Frank, the real estate agent. Mrs. Martinez, the sale is complete, the papers are signed, and the money has been transferred to the account you specified. The new family will take possession at 10 in the morning. Perfect. In 5 hours, my children would discover that the house where they had spent the night celebrating no longer belonged to them and that it had never belonged to them. They would also discover that its new owners had strict orders to change the locks immediately and to call the police if anyone tried to enter without authorization. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it can also be served with a military efficiency that shatters lives in a matter of hours. My flight took off punctually at 6 in the morning. As the plane rose above the city where I had spent 70 years of my life, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. Below were my children probably waking up in a house that was no longer theirs, preparing for a day that would change their lives forever. But I felt no remorse. I had learned that misplaced compassion only invites more abuse. The destination of my flight was a coastal city 1,000 miles away where I had bought a small apartment overlooking the sea, using a financial identity I had been discreetly building for months. It wasn't illegal. It was just smart. I had gradually transferred my savings-established tax residency in another state and created a new life that my children would not be able to track easily. During the flight, my phone continued to receive increasingly desperate messages. At 7:00 in the morning, Susan wrote, "Mom, this can't be happening. There has to be a mistake. The cards say the account is closed. What did you do?" At 8, Kevin sent, "Eleanor, we need answers now. We have bills to pay, commitments to meet. You can't just leave us like this." The irony of his words was delicious. They who had left me without a home and without dignity were now complaining that I had left them without money. The most revealing message came at 9:00 in the morning as I was landing in my new city. It was from Michael, and for the first time in years, he sounded like the scared child he had once been. "Mom, please, you have to help us. Brenda is crying. The kids will be home from school, and we don't know how to explain to them that we don't have a house anymore. We promise we'll never treat you badly again. We just need you to fix this, and everything can go back to the way it was. The way it was." They wanted everything to go back to the way it was when they could abuse my generosity without consequence, when they could treat me like a walking ATM who also cleaned up their emotional messes. But I was no longer the same woman who had entered that house to celebrate her birthday 24 hours earlier. That woman had died the moment Susan screamed at me that I was a burden on their lives. At 10:00 in the morning, exactly when the new family was taking possession of my old house, I received a call from Chloe. Her voice was broken with sobs, but there was something else in her tone. A mature understanding I didn't expect to find in a 16-year-old. Grandma, Mom, and Dad are desperate. Some people showed up with keys and said the house is theirs now. Dad tried to stop them, but they showed legal papers. "And you, my love, are you okay?" I asked, though I knew the answer would be complicated. Chloe sobbed before answering. "I'm scared, Grandma. But I'm also, I don't know how to say it, relieved. Last night after you left, I heard them planning how they were going to spend your money. Mom wanted a new car. Dad was talking about a trip to Europe. And Uncle Michael mentioned an investment in some business. Not one of them mentioned visiting you at the nursing home. Not even once." Chloe's words confirmed what I already knew in my heart. My children hadn't kicked me out of my home to protect or care for me, but so they could spend my money without the hassle of pretending to love me. That final revelation sealed my determination like concrete hardening in the sundae. "Chloe, my love, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You are going to go through some very difficult days, but I want you to remember that none of this is your fault. Your parents made terrible decisions, and now they have to face the consequences. Grandma, can I come with you? I don't want to stay here watching them blame everyone but themselves." My granddaughter's question broke my heart, but I knew it couldn't be. "At least not yet. My love, you're a minor. Legally, you have to stay with your parents. But when you turn 18, if you still want to find me, use the number I gave you last night. There will always be a place for you in my new life." After hanging up with Chloe, I turned off my phone and put it at the bottom of my suitcase. It was time to completely disconnect from the drama I had left behind and start building the life I deserved. My new apartment was small but bright, with windows overlooking the ocean and a balcony where I could sit and drink coffee while watching the sunrise. For the first time in years, no one was yelling at me, asking me for money, or making me feel guilty for existing. 3 weeks later, I turned on my phone for the first time since my arrival. I had 200 voicemails and 500 text messages. The first few days had been desperate. Please, then legal threats, then attempts at emotional manipulation, and finally, when they realized I wasn't going to respond, insults and curses that revealed their true nature. Susan called me a manipulative viper. Kevin accused me of ruining an innocent family's life. And Michael threatened me with legal consequences for family abandonment. But among all those hateful messages, there was something that made me smile. An audio recording they had sent by mistake where Susan could be heard screaming at Kevin that it was all his fault for being so obvious with his intentions. "I told you to be more subtle, you idiot. Now the old woman has left us with nothing, and we don't even know where she is." Kevin responded with equal venom. "At least I wasn't the one who threatened her directly. You were the one who screamed that she was a burden." Their infighting was music to my ears. Not only had they lost my money and my house, but they were also destroying their own marriages with mutual recriminations. Michael had lost his job when his debts came to light. Brenda had had to move back in with her parents. Susan and Kevin were sleeping at different friends' houses each night, and everyone was blaming everyone else for the disaster they themselves had created. 6 months after my escape, I received a certified letter from David, my lawyer. My children had tried to sue me for family abandonment and financial manipulation, but the case had been immediately dismissed when David presented the recordings I had made on the night of my birthday. The judge had not only rejected their lawsuit, but had also warned them that any future attempts at legal harassment could result in criminal charges against them. A year later, on my 71st birthday, I was sitting on my balcony watching the sunset when my doorbell rang. For a moment, my heart raced, thinking my children had found me. But when I opened the door, I was met with Chloe's radiant smile. She was 17 now, looked more mature, stronger, and was carrying a small suitcase. "Grandma, I turned 17 and convinced a judge to let me become emancipated. I'm officially an adult under the law, and I want to live with you if you'll still have me." Her words were like a gift from heaven. I hugged her so tightly that we both started to cry, but they were tears of joy, of reunion, of justice finally served. That night, as Chloe told me everything that had happened during our year of separation, I learned that my children had completely hit rock bottom. Susan was working as a waitress in a fast food restaurant. Kevin had had to declare bankruptcy, and Michael was living in a rented room after Brenda left him and took the children to another city. They had lost everything: money, house, dignity, family, and most importantly, they had lost the only person who had ever truly loved them unconditionally. "Do they ever ask about me?" I asked Chloe as I prepared chamomile tea in my small kitchen. My granddaughter shook her head sadly. "No, Grandma. They still blame you for everything that happened to them. They never accepted responsibility for what they did to you. They still say you're a vengeful woman who ruined their lives on a whim." That night before going to sleep, I went out onto the balcony with my cup of tea and looked at the stars reflecting on the ocean. For the first time in 71 years, I felt completely at peace. There was no one demanding money from me, no one making me feel guilty for breathing, no one trying to control my life. There was just me, my granddaughter, who truly loved me, and the eternal sound of the waves breaking against the shore. My children never understood that the revenge wasn't taking away the money or the house. The real revenge was giving them exactly what they asked for a life without me. Now they had to face the world without my financial support, without my unconditional love, without my constant forgiveness. They discovered too late that I wasn't the burden in their lives. I was the anchor that kept them afloat, and without me, they sank in their own tempests. They never spoke my name again, just as I had predicted, and I never looked back. 5 years have passed since that birthday night that changed my life forever. Today is a Sunday in March, and I'm sitting in my small but beautiful garden, where I grow tomatoes, basil, and the yellow roses I've always loved. Chloe, who is now 22 and studying law at the local university, is beside me, helping me plant tulip bulbs that will bloom in the spring. Her hands are strong and sure, like mine used to be at her age. "Grandma, are you never curious to know how they are?" she asks as she carefully buries a bulb. It's a question she asks me every few months, and my answer is always the same. Sometimes my love but curiosity and nostalgia are luxuries I can't afford. They chose their path, and I chose mine. Chloe nods because after all these years together, she understands that some wounds are too deep to heal, and that some decisions are final. My life here has been fuller than I ever imagined possible. I volunteer at a shelter for battered women, helping others who, like me, needed to find the strength to escape toxic situations. My experience, though painful, has become a tool to help others recognize the signs of emotional and financial abuse. The women who come to the shelter see me and understand that it's possible to rebuild a life after 70. Chloe has become the daughter I never truly had. She is specializing in family law inspired by my story and the desire to protect other vulnerable elderly people. On weekends, we cook together, go to the market walk on the beach. She tells me about her classes, her dreams, her occasional boyfriends, and I give her the advice a grandmother should give. Our relationship is what it always should have been: pure, honest, full of true love. 3 months ago, Chloe received a call from Susan. Her mother had gotten my new phone number through methods I prefer not to know. The message was predictable. They had reflected on their mistakes. They wanted to apologize. They needed my forgiveness and, of course, my financial help once again. Susan told Chloe that Michael had had health problems, that Kevin was unemployed again, and that they had all learned their lesson. Chloe told me about the call while we were making dinner, and I saw in her eyes the same disappointment I had felt years ago. "You know what I told them, Grandma?" she asked as she stirred the vegetable soup. "I told them that forgiveness is something you earn with actions, not with desperate words when you need money. I told them that you are the strongest woman I know, and that if they had been smart, they would have valued that from the beginning." That night, after Chloe went to her room to study, I stayed on the balcony with my herbal tea, watching the lights of the fishing boats on the horizon. For the first time in years, I really thought about my children not with pain or anger, but with a kind of distant compassion, like one feels for strangers who have made terrible mistakes. They had lost more than money or property. They had lost the chance to know the woman I had become after freeing myself from them. The truth is, I am happier now than I was in the last 20 years of my previous life. Every morning I wake up without fear, without anxiety, without the expectation of being hurt by the people who should protect me. My money, though considerably less after all the expenses of my new life, is truly mine. I spend it on what I want. I save what I can. And I give when my heart tells me to, not when someone emotionally blackmails me. I have learned that true love does not demand constant sacrifice. True love is what Chloe and I share. Mutual respect, genuine support, joy in each other's company. True love does not threaten, does not manipulate, does not condition affection on financial benefits. My children never truly loved me. They loved what I could give them. Today, as I write these lines in my journal, I can hear Chloe singing in the shower. It's a song I taught her when she was little, a melody my own mother used to sing to me. Life goes on. Traditions are passed down. But now they are passed through genuine connections, not toxic obligations. If I could send a message to all the women who are living what I lived, I would tell them this. It is never too late to start over. You are never too old to demand respect. You are never too alone to defend yourself. And never ever let anyone convince you that you don't deserve dignity, because your best years are behind you. My best years weren't behind me. My best years began at 70 when I finally learned to put myself first. The sun is setting now, painting the sky with colors I had never noticed when I lived in the city. Tomorrow I will plant more flowers, cook something delicious for Chloe, and maybe write some letters to the women at the shelter who are beginning their own journeys to freedom. My children chose a path that led them to misery. I chose a path that led me to peace. In the silence of my new life, I found my voice. In the solitude of my escape, I found my true family. In the loss of everything I thought was important, I found the only thing that truly mattered, my own dignity. And I will never ever allow anyone to take it from me again.